Okay, for people joining this live stream, we are talking about topic of elegant code formatting. And we've been looking at, well, providing at least an elegant option for code formatting and possibly changing the default. So I can't even tell if this is monospaced or not. Is this monospaced?
The text part's not, no, it's tagged as monospace, so the operators are, but no, this is the new font.
You know, the fact that I can't even tell.
Yeah, I know. See what John thinks of that, but I agree with you.
John?
What do you want me to say?
You can tell that it isn't monospaced. Like
I can absolutely tell. Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Okay.
But the fact that operators are much closer to being monospaced, it makes a difference. But yes, I can absolutely tell nonetheless.
But so John, the tweaks from last time, this added some letter spacing, which actually fixed these tight spaces between operators and text in some cases. So I think we're much closer to monospace than we were last week. Line spacing's a little better, font size is a little better, but if you put this next to a normal notebook, it's fairly similar with just better type.
Sorry, I haven't looked at your notebook. Are you saying that you actually tweaked the space to try to?
Yeah, I gave it so letter spacing. I forget the option, but it actually helped a lot with some of the issues we saw last week.
Okay. So this is not something that you're getting for free from the font at this point.
No, it's a front end option.
Okay. Although you might want that, but yeah.
Yeah.
The space before the opening square bracket of a function is still a little bit too large for my taste.
That there.
Yeah, I mean those, we pad operators, as I think most people here know. The padding is different depending on the operator. So like left and right brackets are padded, mirrored to each other in terms of left and right padding. But those padding values assume monospace. So yeah.
Where do I have this? Is it in code formatting? Code formatting.
Yep, code formatting.
Okay. This is with the new, or this is just some picture of old stuff?
That's new, but italic in text. I thought it's kind of, I liked what was going on in NKS and just tried italic here. I didn't like it for writing code, but in text, it's interesting.
It is interesting.
And in the case that you're using a mono or a serif or a sans font in text, it's going to be helpful. Here, there's cases where you source sans pro in text and inline code wouldn't have much contrast.
It's typically very convenient to make single letter user supplied variables in italic. You can't then differentiate them anymore.
Right. I mean, you mean you're saying, I'm sorry, Michael, are you saying you don't like this because of some other differentiation achieved by italics, or are you saying you do like this?
No, I don't like it because like I would personally, I would make intentionally the A and the K and the lambda and the T italic.
I see. So most of the code is not italic, but those parts are.
Mm-hmm. Then we need another way to indicate user variables in some sense, things that change that are.
I'm pressing non-italic and it isn't doing anything.
I think that's set at the style sheet level. We could tweak the style sheet.
I see. Okay, fine. Okay, I want to find some other blocks of code here. Let me just find a random piece of code. I'm just going to paste the whole thing in. I have no idea what's in here. I don't think it's terribly complicated code, but let's just, I'm going to go to the bottom. Since I'm sure this notebook is specially set up, right, Jeremy?
The bottom's images, yeah, it'd be good to put it there. Yeah.
Oops, why didn't this work? I just copy. Am I going crazy? What would help me read this? Okay, let me try reading it. And by the way, I would, you know, this is one of the problems that we still haven't solved is the spoken form. I mean, like if I read this out loud, I mean, this obviously is helped by the fact it has some, you know, custom line breaking. Okay, you have more examples, Avery is saying. Okay, let me try this without custom line breaking. Okay. God. By the way, people haven't heard it here. I mean, haven't heard it. Something we're needing, and I guess it hasn't been communicated to anybody, is a font character that is the equivalent of this, okay? That shows two characters for use in documentation that's a tucked, you know, a dash and a greater than sign tucked, but with a space. Are you aware of that project, John?
No.
Oh dear, that's no good.
No, this is the very first I'm hearing of this.
I'm not a happy camper because this was in the documentation meeting today and I was told you've been told about it. Ugh. Okay. So the idea is that right now in documentation, we have this trade-off between showing dash greater than so people know how to type it and showing the more elegant arrow. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I say we get rid of that trade-off and we just, for documentation purposes, we have a version of that character that is, you know, visibly two characters, but is tucked to be elegant.
Okay.
And we can do the same thing with you know, with part brackets and things like that. You know, tuck them to increase elegance, but still leave the you know, still leave the structure, so to speak.
I don't know how that would work for part brackets.
Well, just make them a little bit further apart. I'm not sure. The question is really, do people know how to type this?
Oh, maybe you're just suggesting, and my concern was we can only make the character so wide, but maybe you're just suggesting still two brackets, but they're not touching one another.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, I get it now.
Right, it's just like make it more elegant and give the indication of something like the full ligature, but don't actually go full ligature.
Okay.
Is that a custom case that gets used manually when needed, or how do you invoke it?
I think it's a style.
Yeah, it's you would specify the ligature in the help style sheet.
Okay, all right.
And if you copied and pasted it into a default notebook, then it would use the other ligatures.
Yeah, okay.
Which, just so
That
that we're
sounds
thinking
great.
about this, if you copied and pasted it, it would use the other ligatures, which means the appearance would kind of shift on you.
I'm not worried about that.
You're appreciating that? Okay.
Yep, I'm not worried about that. I think the important thing is that you see it in documentation and you know how to type it.
Okay.
That's really all. You know, like you see it in a heading. You know, this looks like kind of we're 1988, and we can do better than that.
Okay.
let's see. Avery is pointing me to, oh, there's an agenda for today, which is, wait a minute, is that different from this, or is that?
Jeremy's examples are in the bottom of this.
Oh, so this is, so I'm confused by this. What do you want me to do here?
Basically, you can run that notebook open to get a new notebook and then apply
Okay,
the
but
styles
after
to
I
that
create
notebook.
the palette.
Correct.
Yeah, so this is just more samples that you could walk through.
Exactly.
I see. Okay. Well, I mean, just in terms of, wait a minute, is this this is an example of it as well?
Right.
I mean,
Everything in that notebook will have it applied.
to me, this is a tweak, but it's a good tweak. I mean, what do other people think? You know, this just makes all these things look slightly better, I think. Anybody, other people have comments on this? Michael, what do you think?
I think it looks good. It's a little bit too black for me. I would prefer a slightly less foot weight overall.
So
I agree. I don't think we have it, but I agree completely. Like it's slightly heavy. But if you go regular, it's a pretty big shift if you get rid of the weight change.
well, and I mean, we are just looking at code here. We're not looking at it in the context of narration. If you get rid of the bold, then just about the only thing left that makes it pop as code is the color, which, you know, there may not be much of. In
The
other
grays
words,
look much worse there too. Yeah.
in other words, if this is, yeah, exactly. If this is surrounded by text, you know, you want the code to not look like text.
I fully agree with you, John, but I was more thinking if the piece of code that Stephen has, CG multi-way would be 10 times as big, then it would go over 3 pages. Then in the middle pages it would be big blobs of black, because there are not much local variables in some areas.
I see.
And let me be clear. I'm not saying I'm attached to the bold. What I'm saying is you want a distinction.
Yes, absolutely.
We can find other ways to make it distinctive, but it really should not go around masquerading as narrative text.
Yeah, see that
Absolutely.
doesn't look bad. I mean that what other distinction could we imagine making? I mean, I don't really like any other kind of, you know, let's take this and I
don't want any background color.
No. Well, so let's try one thing here.
So, I mean, you know, you say it doesn't look bad, but comparing to the non-boldface version that's below it,
well, let's try that. Let's try that.
Yeah, that I'd be concerned about.
No, that doesn't work. That just doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah,
This I want for
you understand my concern.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. You're right. So the question is, what device can we get? And I was just going to try one thing here.
I mean, I think the main other thing would be color.
Yeah, well, right. So that's what I was going to try. Jeremy, do you have a suggested, you know, place to go for color?
I don't know.
How do I get even to the how do I get to the
the
non-black and white?
chevron at the top right?
Yeah.
I don't know what is it? What is
Color
it?
wheel might work now.
Color wheel. Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
And if you move the center part out, nothing changes, right? Ah,
Oh,
okay.
color's there.
Okay. Now move the slider to the left. That's the problem.
Oh yeah, it's all black.
What threw me off is that the slider is oppositely directed from what I expected. I expected black to be on the left.
This doesn't have enough contrast for me.
I know, didn't work. Yeah. Jeremy, do you have a suggestion about a color direct? I mean, something like this is not, except for the fact that blue is very much a used color. I mean, how do we go purple here? Where do we go for purple, Jeremy? Do we go
More towards the red, yeah, over there, yeah, that's it.
This isn't doing it for me.
Mm.
It's kind of fun, actually. It's less black.
Well, and remember what I said toward the end of the last meeting, which is that when you look at when people are putting code onto slides, that oftentimes they're going with very bold colors on slides. At least that's my experience.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I couldn't stand writing everyday code in
Yeah,
purple.
that's where I'm stuck. It's just, couldn't imagine using this day to day. And then the color for numbers seems crazy.
So, okay, but so are we imagining? All right, so what you've got right now to me is a tweak on what we currently have. It's an improvement tweak. And it's one that I think many people, if we put it into production, you know, probably nobody would even notice, would be my guess. People would, I mean, just like, you know, if you quizzed me on the difference between documentation formatting and this formatting and so on, I just wouldn't even notice it. And the fact that I don't notice it does not mean it doesn't make it easier for me to read it. But so what is our thought? That we put something, we change the default. I mean, I'm just trying to think what it would feel like. Okay, so here, let me just try. You know, and by the way, we could have, you know, slightly brighter colors for some of these things, although I'm not sure. How does this feel? Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't know the difference between this. So this is just a slightly more elegant version of what I would normally, you know, what I would normally be doing here. I don't think I would, I think I barely notice the difference, except that, why did this get, that's much more compact there. Why is that? Why is it, oh, is it because of the lack of monospacing? Why did this get more compact?
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly why.
Because there was otherwise a monospace space here, whereas here it's just a kind of a.
I bet it's the commas. I bet the commas are monospaced, so the commas have lots of air around them in the source serif or the source sans. Yeah.
But we don't have that, and we don't, and we think we don't want that. I mean, why do we not want more comma spaces?
Well, we didn't tweak the font itself. We just tweaked a setting in the font, but we didn't change any of the geometry. It can be tweaked. We just didn't do that yet. So we could fix that.
Okay. Avery is asking about this purple. Let me just try. How do I enter a color? Can I do it from here? How do I just type in a color?
the, yeah, show expression or option inspector.
Well,
What?
CMYK is an interesting choice.
I cannot tell that. I mean, hold on. So this, so first of all, what happens if we go unbold? Kind of looks bad. Okay, let's go bold, and then let's get rid of that color. Well, I mean, this certainly gets rid of the overwhelming blackness. I'm not sure that it's an everyday kind of code color. It's not terrible, actually. Michael, what do you think?
I would probably stick with black for my personal use.
You could try cutting the black just slightly, like a gray level 0.1 to see if that helps. It'll be subtle.
Does help a bit. Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. It is no longer so overwhelmingly black as above.
I mean, I wonder what happens if we go. I'm at 125 here. Let me just see. I think it does help. This gray level 0.1 does help. Okay. And it also is interesting because it would potentially allow an accent color that could be helpful for some of the things we're trying to do. All right. So I mean, I think it'd be worth just trying to switch this on as a default and see whether people internally, you know, in version 13.3 builds or something freak out about it. Lucas is commenting that they have a slightly grayish blue for the system context, which makes custom stuff pop out more. Okay. I notice suggesting making the background of the cell black. Well, that's going to look terrible. I mean, that's, we obviously have to solve this for dark mode, but that's a separate thing. Okay. All right. So okay. So I think we've got here. I mean, these commas look like they've got plenty of space. There's some issue with commas, maybe. I say we try making this a default and see what happens. Comments from people?
Default, what do you mean by default?
For code.
No, for input, not for code.
I mean, I meant for input.
Okay,
Code
good.
is a different story.
For all notebooks?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought we were talking about special notebooks, not everything.
Well, I just think it's so hard to even distinguish this. I mean, I can barely tell the difference. Okay, but I think it's somewhat better. So I'm asking the question, I mean, between this and this, there really is so little difference Yet this is slightly nicer to read. So why not try just using it?
So this is how you sneak in the back door over my objections, over my proportionally spaced objections.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
Which is we have 6 meetings where we're not talking about default notebooks, and then you just say, let's do this for default notebooks.
But I just think that it is not that different. I mean, do you, okay, I just want to understand from you, if you look at this versus this, does this jump out at you as, oh, this is horrible?
I think the one
Well,
case
horrible for what purpose?
I mean, if I'm doing custom tabbing, then I'm doing code. I'm not doing, regular notebook, input cells.
But I was just going to say, I would like to see a larger piece of code with custom indentation where things have to line up, and I have Greek and other characters, and I want to see how they align.
Okay, well, we should do that. I mean, I think, yes, I agree. I mean, I'm just saying, I mean, I don't know how we put this in and have anybody use it. I mean, it's a good start, I suppose, to have, we could just have this be, I don't know where we put this, John, so people would actually use it. So we don't simply have a repeat of what we've had for so many years, where people like publish books where they put code in Courier font and so on. John, what's your suggestion for how to enable this?
For the purpose of writing books, we figure out a workflow for writing books.
No, not for writing books. I'm talking about people who are trying to make notebooks that I'm not talking about people who say, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to take 3 months to do the setup for it. I'm talking about somewhat everyday stuff. I just don't get the objection. That's the point. I don't get, to me, the distance between here and here is not that great, except this looks a bit more elegant. I mean, it'd be one thing if this was just dramatically different, but I just don't see it. I don't get what feature you're seeing in this, which you're not seeing in this. Help me to understand that. I just don't understand.
Well, I mean, for one thing, I mean, we got to the point where the boldface was the only thing that caused it to pop. So what do outputs look like? Outputs look the same as inputs?
Well, that's a good question.
Do the outputs suddenly become,
okay, that's a good question.
They look exactly like narration?
Okay, that's a good question. Let's look for that. Let's look at that. I mean, we're talking about this for inputs. We have not talked about it for outputs. Will it have it for output cells here?
I think operators will be gray. There's some tweaks I made to input that won't flow into output, like line spacing. But operators are black. I'm surprised those aren't gray, John. Or is that on purpose?
That's on purpose.
Okay.
I think. Well, I don't remember. I don't remember.
So, John, you're raising, that's a perfectly valid objection. Okay. Because I don't think this looks particularly good.
I mean, part of the problem is I'm getting old. My vision is getting worse. I do not want to struggle to distinguish the code from the text. It's why that's the first thing I raised when we were talking about this.
Okay, but I don't think there's a huge problem in distinguishing this text from this code. Is there?
But I mean, before there were 2 big indicators, we removed one of them. The other one is still mostly sufficient. And when I say the 2 big indicators, I mean bold-facing and monospacing.
Yep. Okay, but if that's your point, I mean, that's good to know that's your point. It's not something to do with tabbing. I agree that this is not adequate. That distinction is kind of questionable.
I mean, there will also be issues of people who, expect monospacing for other reasons, but I want code that looks like code. I admit,
want code that looks elegant.
I admit that there's, it's a combination of functional and cultural expectations, but
okay, but I don't think this breaks the cultural expectations here. I agree that this doesn't make it.
I think that for some people it will absolutely break the cultural expectations.
Okay, well, let's try it. Let's put it in and see what happens.
I'm expecting pitchforks.
Okay, well, fine. It's good to expect pitchforks. If it turns out that nobody notices, that's a good piece of data. Right? It's like the famous, shrinking blob thing, where basically we put it in and essentially nobody noticed, except that they didn't lose their place and when they typed. But look, what about the output?
If we put it in, could we add a preference so they could change it at least?
Well, so here's the problem. When you add that preference, the people who care most will turn it off, and we'll never hear from them again, because they've already given us up as being lunatics that they don't want to, and they want no part of this.
Yeah, okay, fine. But I okay, if we can get somewhere where we can turn this on, that will be a good start. Okay, so I can try it at least, if nobody else wants to try it.
WFR?
Yeah, possibly.
Sorry, I didn't catch what you said.
A WFR function.
Oh, WFR, okay.
I'm not keen on that. Not keen on that. I mean, honestly, I never use a non-default style sheet, except when it is part of a whole complicated workflow. All right, but listen, we've got a real problem here, which is what to do with the outputs. Okay. Is that coming out? And is that in the new
Source sans, yeah, that's the new font. I expect more problems with.
Wait. Is this not this looks monospaced.
It's not, no.
I can't even tell. I can't tell. John?
Yeah,
well, now, right? Side by side, it's clear.
Yeah.
The choice of content in there makes it more difficult to tell.
Yeah.
It's because all of the characters in there are full width except for the one, and the one is sitting there by itself.
Okay, so the square root of 5 looks kind of funky. I'm not sure that graying down the square roots is the right thing.
Yeah.
This doesn't look absolutely horrible, though.
Wait, would the gray carry through? How would the gray get into output? It can't, right?
You mean the operator, the structure?
Well, that option, that 0.1 isn't soaking into the output. I think that's just the way it looks.
Okay. I mean, this looks pretty decent to me. This doesn't.
So Jeremy, it depends on if you applied it to the input style or the standard form style.
I think it just went into the cell. It didn't. No, I didn't add it anywhere. Steven just tweaked the cell.
Yeah.
Oh, that's sorry. That's right. Yes, sorry, I have to remind myself what code I gave you. I guess it was to the whole notebook, so it would probably be, yeah, any standard form.
We'll do what?
We'll gray down, or we'll gray the operators just the way that I spec'd it, because it was easier to spec it that way.
So this will gray the operators.
Yes.
Okay, which is what it seems to be doing.
Yeah. But that's just, I wasn't thinking about it when I gave you that setting. That could in principle be, turned on or off on a per style basis.
I have to say, I'm not horrified. I'm a lot less horrified than I initially for a moment was with these.
Could we get, Michael, do you have anything with Greeks that would show? I'm worried about the font weight comparison of source sans with Greeks. Just, we haven't looked at it.
Just like, take the CG multi-way graph definition and wrap a hold around it.
Doesn't look horrible, but I'm not convinced that that's a great Greek font for this. I mean,
Yeah.
we may be able to find another Greek font. Wait a minute, this one here. What do you want me to do? Oh, yeah. I see.
Just wrap hold around it.
I mean, what am I supposed to see here? Are the operators gray or not?
Well, what you're supposed to see is now this is starting to look an awful lot like text. Just text.
Yeah. Except it doesn't.
The only thing that's really holding it apart from the text is the white space and the operators. That's starting to get pretty subtle and pretty dependent on what the actual content of that guy was.
I agree. I mean, look, in the case where we put in something like, we put fold in here, and I don't even know how do I do Command 9 there. Oh, I see. Now you're italicizing that.
Well, yeah, I tweaked it. If it weren't italic, I think this is roughly what we do in your EIWL book. It's a semi-bold for inline code.
Why can't we use semi-bold here, by the way?
That's semi-bold. It's not bold. But there's no, if we go slightly thinner, it would be better. But we don't have that weight.
Semi-bold, by the way, is not just here. It's what we use in default right now in 13.2.
All right, just for I mean, it's like distinguishing math. I mean, yeah, that's not usable for general output. Looks quite nice though. Well, so what is the issue here? I mean, we're looking at. That's wild.
That looks not good.
Well, we're just not at all used to it. I mean, it looks a little bit more like ordinary math in a sense. Okay. Where are we going from here? I think we should, have a way of setting this, and you tell me what you want to do for how that's set up, John. A way so that I can routinely set a notebook to use these new styles, both of them, for input and output. What's the right way to set that?
Well, if it's only in the prototype build, there will be fewer pointy objects being shoved in my direction.
Yeah, I don't tend to use the prototype build for production stuff, though. I mean, is there just some switch we could put in somewhere? What would we do if we were doing this for actual users? What would we do? We put it in the format menu. We put it in style environment or something.
I mean, we can certainly make a version of default.mb that would overload your, your style sheet. So
by not just me. Right? I want something where you set something and just say set this. But it's got to be able to be sticky, which this is not by default, right?
What about default screen environment? Well, it'd have to have a backup in case it's not there.
Well, but there isn't a default screen environment. Or you're
Well,
stuck-
working is default right now, but I don't know how that works.
Oh, I see.
I'll have to double check this, but I think that you could set a global environment that wouldn't get
but-
saved into your notebooks.
Okay. Okay. I
Um,
mean, but that's some crazy thing with the option inspector, which is not a user level thing.
right. But I mean, anything in the option inspector is one line of code, which means it can be a WFR or whatever you want.
Mm. Well, we can try it, I suppose. I mean, that's a beginning.
Now, although of course WFR isn't, I mean, sorry, in terms of deploying it to users, are you talking about 13.2 users? Because
Yes.
that means deploying a new version of default.mb to 13.2 users who want this, and that's a little bit, it's possible, but it's a little trickier.
Okay. Well, I mean, that would be nice because I'm certainly going to use 13.2 for the next.
I think basically it's something we'd want to do as a packlet.
Okay, fine.
Because
right, let's get it. Let's figure out how,
because any other mechanism would end up potentially causing problems with 13.1, 13.3, et cetera. A packlet, we can make it only work on 13.2.
Okay, let's get a solution where we can deploy this, at least for me, in a nice, smooth way, and let's see how it feels like, what it feels like, and including for output. Okay, and I may very well come back and say it's hopeless, it's not working, but let's find out.
Okay, Jeremy, are there things you're gonna refactor before I would look at this?
I want to put in the 0.1 for input and then I think that's it. I could look at output, which I haven't taken much of a look at. So
yeah, why don't you look at that? Now, I've got another question. Why are we not doing any syntax coloring in output?
Because I mean, it's an intentional decision.
I know.
It's syntax coloring is to help you read code, and you're not reading output in the same way that you're reading code.
I know, except in a case like
what
this.
I mean.
Right, except where you have patterns and things in the output, except where the output is code. My question is, if we're not syntax coloring, look, in a case like this, we don't want to syntax color things. But we wouldn't anyway. There'd be nothing syntax colored here in input, right?
Aside from the operator coloring that we're doing, there would be context coloring. So the alphas would be context colored.
Okay. But nothing else. I mean, like this doesn't have any color, context colors. I mean, any colors at all. But you're saying if I replaced, well, that X.
And any global context variable with no assignment, the X's, the alphas, all those would get the global coloring, the blue that we use for global coloring.
Okay.
In my opinion,
for single variables, it's barely noticeable. Go ahead, Michael.
If there's anything which for me makes output not easy usable, it's the missing of string quotes. Especially if I read a 2 megabyte XML file and then inspect it. I always have to make an input to extract the relevant parts.
But I think you will also agree that the barn door is open on that one. There isn't really anything we can do about that.
Yes. I'm just saying, kind of, if there's anything that would be.
Yeah, well, I mean, the only issue is a hover effect, but even that I'm not convinced about. But I mean,
the hover effect would have deleterious effects.
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
I mean, for example, like a manipulate. There are more places than you might think of where the quotes are hiding, and it's a good thing.
Yeah, I understand. What about when you click?
What about when you click? Sorry, what's your question?
Actually, Sandra is making a good point, which is if in your output you've used style to color something, and then syntax coloring comes in and stomps on it, that's no good.
Yeah.
It's a good reason to not syntax color the output. I mean, there's a certain argument. Okay, so Michael is saying he has to switch to input form to see string quotes.
Yes.
I mean, there's a certain argument.
Like your piece of code that you just said is a perfect example for it.
Which piece of code?
The little one this one with the hold.
I see. Okay. Yeah,
the layered
right.
embedding. How do you know that the layered embedding? Obviously, you know
it's absolutely hopeless. Right. It's hopeless. I agree. So, to me, rather than switching to input form, which blows everything up, it would be nice to be able to switch this output to a form that is kind of output input, so to speak. I mean, imagine we had another style that was, suitable for these cases where the output you get, you really want to think of as input. Is that a common enough case?
Yes, but then people click into the output and make it into an input.
Well, I understand. That's what I do most of the time for this. Yeah. Except that, I mean, we've got a cell gear menu coming, and that's a place where we could put some more of this stuff. Like, show, we could say show as input or something, or show with, seems to me that would be a place which people would actually, after a short while, learn that you could do that. Seems helpful to me. I mean, I could also imagine.
Sorry, I had someone chatting me about the next meeting I'm missing. I didn't catch your suggestion.
My suggestion is that in the cell gear menu, we have show as input or something, some such other thing, which isn't switched to input form, but just show, I don't know, show with input regalia or whatever you want to call it. Seems like a good suggestion to me. And that way you get string quotes, you get syntax coloring, you get all these things if you want it, and you don't otherwise.
No, I mean, what is the advantage to having that be a separate thing over just converting it to an input cell?
Well, how do you, okay, fine. We could have something that says convert to input cell. I don't even know how to do that. How do I do that?
But I mean, it's the same thing as if you typed into it.
I know that, but typing
except
into
without
it
the typing.
Okay, so if I do Command 9, I do that.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, fine. I mean, if that was in the cell gear menu, that would probably be enough. That's probably just fine. That's probably perfectly sufficient. Michael.
It's a version of what I do right now.
Right, but having that in the cell gear menu seems worthwhile. Okay,
yeah,
let's take a quick moment. Okay, so I think we've got a plan here. Let's take a quick moment to look at these. Where were they? This code kind of looks fairly nice like this, I have to say. Boy, there's a bunch of random irrelevant code here. Okay. All right, let's look at this. This is, okay, are these mock-ups like?
Yeah, this is just Photoshop.
Okay.
We had looked at these a little bit and agreed they probably weren't that helpful, except maybe on focus. Definitely not while coding.
No, definitely not as default output.
Did I miss something? I'm not remembering a discussion around this.
Yeah, we talked about underlining and kind of emphasizing the basically embedments, kind of the nestings going on in code.
Okay, maybe I was just so not behind the idea that I
Yeah.
threw it out.
Which
of my
included
memory.
adjusting the baseline, which you gave some code for, right?
But this is not meant as static.
Oh,
No.
okay. Yes, I remember the adjusting the baseline. Okay, yeah. I forgot about suggesting underlining. That's what I forgot.
I don't think this particular code is so useful to do that with.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to see it for if we have. Do we have code that can do underlining?
No, I mean, not easily. We only have one method of underlining unless you're gonna turn it like into a graphic or another weird.
What do you mean we have a method? What's
structure.
okay? So I mean, but couldn't we just make this a box that has a an overscript box or something?
Well, yes, you could do underscript boxes, but then it's not properly editable.
But I don't care for purposes of seeing what it looks like. That will be enough. mean,
Even in this case, Stephen, it wasn't clear for me what to do with parens and curly brackets as far as underlines go, and I still don't know. It seems like it'd be a mess if I included them, so I didn't.
So this is function nesting, but nothing else.
Yeah.
Which is also what the yellowing does, is function nesting.
And in the end, I thought include the head. I think these don't have it, but it seemed more useful to start with the head and end with the closing square bracket.
I agree with you.
Yeah. So the bottom is another experiment. So if you scroll down a little bit, some highlighting with the same concept and some different types of underlining without all the layers.
God.
Yeah.
I can't tell anything from this.
Yeah, I know.
Look, the thing that would be easier to tell is nested boxes. Let me just offer a suggestion here. I mean, just an example. Okay, I'm going to show you an extreme version of nested boxes. I'm sure I've got code to do this. Let me see where it is. There are some extreme nested boxes in here. Okay, see those nested boxes?
Yeah.
You can definitely tell what groups with what. Even when it's dotted, it's hard to tell.
I think it probably works well in a single line. Could you imagine line wrapping though? I think it breaks as soon as you get 3 or 4 lines of code.
Totally certain about that. Well, let's find out. I mean, we can just click to copy this creature. Oh, for goodness sake, really? Oh, I picked the absolutely worst line to do that with. Wow, okay. All right, now let's try, oh gosh. Well, I mean, that has both color and, all right, let's try a bigger one of these. Come on, I've got definitely have these. Okay, let's try this. I mean, it may not even line up properly, I don't know. Actually, it's interesting because I'm actually now using Okay, that's pretty hopeless. I don't even know what it did there.
Are we missing stuff off to the right? Scroll to the right. I think it's probably one big long, yeah.
Yeah, I
Wow.
mean, this is humorously bad. But I mean, this is also a very worst case situation. And by the way, this isn't even, oh, I see. This is only showing the rewrites that can happen. Yeah, never mind. This is only showing some subset of the things.
But to get a box that would clip and then flow to the next line, this is going to be tough, you know. You won't
Yeah, I
find a way
know.
to
And then you have
simulate
to
that.
decide whether.
Yeah.
I think the majority of cases where one wants such a feature is one has a reasonable large piece of code, say longer than 4 lines, that one didn't write oneself and wants to understand what it does. And it cannot reformat. It's basically like double clicking more and more is very useful, but it is kind of an expensive operation to do.
Yes, exactly. Look, I'm getting used to this yellow thing, and the fact that we now have it be bright yellow is really good. There's a community post here. Does somebody have, maybe you can just point me to the raw thing on the community here.
It won't have the right styling stuff from Jeremy though. That's why I uploaded it.
I see. Okay, let's take a look. And what's your point? This basically looks pretty good.
Yeah, with the spacing and everything, I think it looks really good.
Well, I mean, there's clearly things went wrong with the spacing here, but that might have been in the source. I mean, this is code, though. And these rules are getting applied to the code as well, as opposed to just input. You know what I'm saying? Because this here, right, if I make that just
Is
pure
it code
input,
though, or is it initialization cell?
Oh, it's an initialization cell. How do I get rid of that? I do Control 8. Yeah, okay. Okay, so it wasn't in fact code. But what is code is Command 8, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
In this case, not getting, oh, what did it do? It did something really weird here. Oh, I see. It's left the fonts, but it got rid of the spacing. Is that right? Well, we clearly need to figure out what's happening with code here.
Keep that in mind, John, because there was no intent for that to flow into like the package editor, but I don't know how to structure it so it doesn't.
Okay,
And-
Stephen, sorry, I was slightly distracted because I was just as an amusing experiment. I'm throwing something in the chat here. You can, oops, sorry, nope, wrong thing, sorry. Sorry, let me try again. There, okay, so like after your resource function, paste what I just threw in the chat.
Which resource?
Sorry, after like the combinator evolve resource function. Yeah, that one.
Okay.
At the end, just paste what I threw in there for you.
This here.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, in this particular case, this is quite useful. I mean, it saves from absolute hopeless horror. Let's see what
there's a little bug in my code that causes it to skip a few levels, but that gets you the general idea, though.
I mean, for this particular use case, it's lovely.
Try this with your hold from above.
Exactly what I was going to try. Yeah. Where is that? What's this?
Yeah, see. Can you find it?
No, I'm just. What do you mean? Can I find it? You mean the code in the text? Yes, I can find the code in the text. That's not what wasn't my problem. Okay, so I want to make this hold, and then I want to say slash, and then I want to give you a thing here.
Well, because overscript box doesn't want to break lines, so that's why it's all in one line.
It's not so helpful if we can't. I don't know how we really see something like this work usefully. I mean, maybe I can just pick out. That's somewhat short.
Actually, I take it back. That's not a bug in my code. If that's the gaps are quite intentional, it turns out. Yeah.
Okay, let's understand this. So, is it possible to make your code include the heads? Is that easy to do, or is because?
Yes, I can do that.
I mean, this thing here is just confusing to me because it doesn't include that head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's a pretty easy modification. I think. Let's see.
Sandra's commented like the single thick line that was this one here. And the question would be, could you make that darker? I doubt that will work, but it's conceivable.
So the idea with that one is if you got used to the colors, you would know by color the nest levels. So if that was
right, but what sequence of colors are people used to? I even have a hard time remembering, red.
I know. Blue. I started with just straight hue, but then I threw in the green. So the greens, like in that middle one, would be your focus point.
Well, you know the hue, but I don't think most people even know that the hue very well. Yeah. I mean, I think that I could imagine. I mean, we could try. And the problem is it's kind of like a barber polling type thing because you never know how deep you're going to go.
Right. But it's constant. No, so if you go from focus point outwards, then, your second level nesting is always the same color. Your third level is the same.
I don't understand how you can guarantee that because you don't have the colors. You could go 100 levels down.
But you go inside out. Your color starts with your focus point and then spreads outwards. So like.
Okay, okay. I just threw in the chat. It's an extremely ugly implementation because I'm trying to turn around something quickly, but I think that will work. And of course, it underlines even the hold, which you wouldn't want, but that's what you get for making me write code in 2 minutes.
5 seconds, right? I wonder what would happen if these had some kind of color gradient. Probably it's hopeless because again, you never know how deep you're going to go.
And the fact that the depths are uneven, I mean, it looks like a bug,
Well, we talked about maybe just if this was on demand, based on where your cursor's focused, you'd only see one pyramid at a time.
Well, if it's selection based, then yes, that's true.
I'm not worried about it looking like a bug. People will get used to that very quickly. And I think one could avoid that problem by just putting a small background color behind all of this stuff. I don't think that would be a problem, the gapping. Question is this useful? Looking at this.
You can follow heads pretty closely.
I think you can, actually. I mean, you can get some idea. I can't tell you what is this line versus this line very easily.
But if you start in the center and then you work yourself out, then that's a useful thing. And in general, just kind of following the heads backwards.
Okay, what is useful here? What's useful here is the stepping down.
Mm-hmm.
Why is the stepping down useful? The stepping down is useful because it is easier to see that than to see. Somebody switched the video on.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Nice
The
to
single
see.
line did the stepping down too, though. If you look at that and you're just thinking of, starting inside and then stepping down, you get the same thing.
Sorry, say that again.
Try the
the
single line version really quick. And if you're just,
What's the single line version? You mean your
yeah, the colorful rainbow. If you start on the inside and then you're stepping down, you're just following the lines, right? To see function heads.
I agree. Yeah. So, John, is it possible for you to just put a random color into these different levels? Is that easy to do?
For the levels to differ from one another, that's not so easy. That'll
Just
take me more than 2 minutes.
line. Just here, I'm gonna do what I think.
But coloring them all the same color is easy, but coloring them different colors is.
I'm gonna suggest this. Maybe I'm crazy here.
Let's see.
Right, like this. Oops. Wait a minute. What did I do wrong?
Sorry. Wait.
What did I
Font color. Font color.
Oh, I need to do this not with style. What do I do here?
Style box. Style box. And you probably should put font color arrow.
Okay, but where's my bracketing wrong?
One more bracket after the random color. Yeah, I just made the same change locally and it works for me.
Okay, but those colors look terrible. How do I make brighter dark? I mean, what do I do? I'd say darker of this, 0.7. Oh, great.
Try bold.
That's useless. Okay. So if I say font weight arrow bold.
Yeah.
Better. Those colors are surprisingly unhelpful.
I mean, frankly, I would have expected for something like this that you might want like more transparency.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, do you really want the colors to? I mean, you're trying to prevent the colors from popping by making them darker,
Oh no, I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to make them visible. They were not visible. They were just like,
yeah.
you know,
Well,
fading to black. I mean,
yeah.
fading to white or something. But the
I mean, I would have gone for like a more transparent color, something with opacity.
well, I admit that this with the bolding, this is not so invisible.
Yeah.
Actually, this is not completely functionally useless. Looks kind of ugly and weird, but it's not functionally useless. If you try and trace what's where, it would probably help if this thing here had a little hook on it that connects it up to that edge form. Which
so I mean, there are a couple of things that cause this. I did this because I thought it would be amusing to look at, but I think there are a couple of ways in which this quickly breaks down. First of all, I don't see how. I think it's difficult for this to communicate information across line breaks.
Not with color, I think it's not impossible.
But still difficult. You're looking at things that are quite far apart from each other, and even if you're lining up radically different colors, you're still doing some lining up, if you understand my meaning.
I know.
And then the other issue is that in order for this to be usable, and if it's going to be at every level, you're just throwing out your line spacing. Line spacing is now just a random number.
I agree. I don't know whether that's a terrible thing or not. I mean, it's not the case that this is something this is not on by default by any means. Okay, so there are a couple of different options here. One is, you select an anchor point and then you go out from there. I think that's less useful than this global thing, I have to say.
I think it's very useful.
Yeah, me too.
In a large piece of code, you want to understand a certain segment. You select an anchor and look there.
I do multi-click all the time.
So do I.
Not having to multi-click but get the same out of it would be useful.
Okay, so hold on. We got two different problems we're trying to solve here. One is the global view of the code, which I claim this is not as useless as you think. If one was actually trying to understand this code without clicking, so to speak.
You have to acknowledge limits. You cannot go to infinite depth on this. So you at some point you have to give up.
Fair point.
I mean, you could say we can do up to 5 levels, up to 10 levels, pick a number, but you have to pick a finite number. Not just finite, but small.
Wait. What would it actually do if you went too far? I mean, taking this as an example. This is about as deeply nested, but that's very locally nested. Right. The difficulty is.
Well, I mean, imagine, nest f of x 100 or something like that. No, you made the same mistake I made first time. Up to the // not the / dot. The first time I sent you something and I said, no, that's the wrong thing. It's because I went to the / dot as well. So you and I made the same mistake. It's on the previous line, or you can add the // yeah. Yeah, that'd be fine.
What are all those nulls doing anyway? What are the nulls?
That's probably a bug. I'm pretty sure it's a bug in my code.
Okay, fine.
But you get the idea of why we have to have limits.
It's entertaining. But what would the limiting look like? The limiting would just be that you cut off I mean, you could go somehow hyperbolic, and you could, you know, or something. You could make those things closer and closer together.
Oh, by the way, I just found the bug in my code. And I can point you right where it is. If you go back to the definition of code color, I put an extra comma after mid, comma. Just delete one of those commas. There you go.
Help!
Oh,
Ooh.
Really? Why would that have failed?
No. It's I introduced a cycle which my extra comma accidentally worked around in the replace solve repeated.
I'm going to put a
that's what happened.
I'm putting a Hackalova in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's okay. I mean, here. Well, it's more useful than it was just with brackets. I mean, this is a very hard to read thing. I should wrap this up in a second, but I mean, what I'm suggesting is these things get closer together so you don't have a stack this tall. You see what I'm saying? So if you have something where the distance between these things goes, you know, you can have it limit to a fixed, it's like Michael at least knows what I'm talking about, like in the Poincare disk, for example.
Yeah.
No, I mean, whatever strategy you use to try to merge, it's always going to, you know, it's always going to eventually either fail or throw information out. Eventually, it's, you know, this is a failure. If you try to squeeze it in, it's going to throw effectively.
No, well,
throw
that's right.
information
That's
out.
it is. But I don't think it's so bad. I don't think it will throw out. In other words, I think it will show you the stuff you care about. Because it will show you, is there a connection between this and that? That won't be lost, probably. I don't know. It would require some thought, but I think the
I mean, the question is, how far do you need to see that connection?
I don't know.
I mean,
but we could,
you know, once you've gone 10 heads out, was it so important anymore? I
don't know, but I do think. I think it could be important to see that globally, but I think that there's a way to do it so that the detail of, okay, here's the information you don't need. That was the 18th level of head. You don't need to know the 18. You need to know there was a connection between here and there, but you don't care whether it was on the 18th level or the 12th level.
So, by the way, it should be pointed out that in user assistance, we had a proposal for from NOAA for a kind of a you know, an exploration type interface, you know, where you would hover and it would do these things on hover. And I think that proposal is
maybe sensible. I mean,
I don't remember where we left it. It may be on ice for now.
Well, maybe we should bring that back to this discussion. That may be better. I mean, this static one, I agree with you. It's a little bit over. Oh, I think it could be useful. By the way, we should make a WFR out of this thing that you just created. It'll be useful for something.
Well, maybe I'll make a version that works then.
There's a few comments on live stream, and then we should wrap it up here. Lucas asks, what about just highlighting all the heads wrapped around the current cursor position?
That's like dynamic highlighting, but all the way up.
Yeah, so that's this.
And we've talked about, in user assistance, we've talked about doing that with dynamic highlighting. And I think both you and I have agreed that we have concerns that it would be confusing and not as informational as you might hope.
Well, it's worth an experiment. I mean, to take this, now that we have a bright yellow there, and just have like a tinge of yellow on the outer ones.
Well, I mean, the two obvious things to do from my perspective, thing number one would be you know, applying levels of increasing levels of transparency on the way out. The proposal number two would be radically different colors, the rainbow proposal.
No, I don't think that's useful. I think the thing I'd like to see is just the inner one, bright yellow, all outer ones, lighter yellow.
Well, I think the farther out, the lighter it should be.
Okay, we can try that. But
I don't think you want to treat, 2 or 3 levels out, or 2 levels out the same as 3 levels out. I really don't think.
Okay, fine. We should try this. It's a good idea. We should try it. Because I don't know, what would it highlight here? I mean, it's going to be, I could go click it.
Well, just click in the word graph and you'll see what it would highlight next. Just, start wherever you want, and then whatever it's highlighting, click on the highlight thing and you'll see the next thing out that will highlight. So now click on graph. And now you'll see the next thing that will get highlighted, which is the width.
This would be useful. This would be
So
useful.
in that particular case, it's a quite shallow.
This would be quite useful.
Well,
this would be useful.
I've proposed it before, but you and I were constantly fighting on this because
just that trick is useful. I find that the trick of just clicking the yellow and following it back is useful. I've never done that.
This will be useful. To click here and see sort of lighter stuff out, so long as it's light enough that you really aren't confused by what's what.
Ooh, could you delay it, John, and have them kind of fade in, like sequentially? That'd be a nice effect.
I'm quite skeptical of that.
I think
like a little explosion as it goes out.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, that would be very helpful to be able to see that. Let's see. Click a bracket now, highlights the other bracket. What if it just highlighted? What if it just highlighting the other bracket, underlining it, but for that chunk? I don't think you'd like that, because as soon as you do underlining, you've got to move you've got to move things around, and that's going to be really ugly. Highlighting is doable in place. All right, we should wrap it up here. This was very helpful. We should have another one of these, but let's get some things implemented, and let's get, I really like to see this multi-head thing. That seems useful to me. Seems really quite useful. All right, anything else to say for this meeting? Nope. Okay, good stuff. And thank you to people on the live stream for lots of useful comments here. I thought there'd be useful comments on this topic. All right, see you guys soon. Bye for now.